Welcome back. Orlando State Representative Anna Eskamani has made a statewide name for herself, railing against corporate influence in the state and demanding better treatment for workers in Florida. This week, she announced when her term in the legislature ends in 2026, she will be running for mayor of Orlando. It's an interesting move, and we discuss why Democrats in the state may need to refocus their attention on the local level.
So as a younger city, and as a city that has a very diverse population within a state that is oftentimes hostile towards some of the values that are well established in Orlando, it's important to have strong and effective leadership with deep community ties that also has a proven track record of effective advocacy and strong results that are people-centered. And I'm a firm believer in prioritizing residents over big corporations and doing what we can to make sure that any type of growth in our city is smart and thoughtful and doesn't spread our neighborhoods apart or separate our communities. I also want to see a focus on small businesses, as many are struggling right now, alongside investments in public infrastructure. And I will be reaching the end of my service in the state legislature in 2026. So when it comes to my years of experience, I can complement the work in City Hall. I feel very confident that I'll be able to deliver on all those policy goals and more.
I'm curious as to your thinking. Is it almost because of the culture right now in Tallahassee, the fact that Democrats are in not just the minority, but, basically Republicans are in supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, that in some ways it's sort of a realization that for Democrats, you almost need to rebuild from the local level going forward, and that you can be more effective locally than you can trying to influence things in Tallahassee?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Jim. 100%. I mean, the Democratic Party right now, statewide, and arguably even nationally, is struggling. And when I look at Florida in particular, this was a trend that I was watching years ago and really started following the 2020 campaign cycle, where we saw national divestment from Florida of different funding organizations, which led to very large disparities between voter registration and, of course, election results. And at the time, there were folks who wanted me to consider running for governor, which is always a very humbling expression of support. But when I look at the numbers and just the state of play here in Florida, unless Democrats are reinvesting in communities, are registering people to vote, and also proving to our constituents that we are worth electing and that we're going to solve problems and ensure that corporations won't dictate the agenda, that people have a voice in this process, unless we can actually deliver on that vision, then it's going to be very difficult to earn the support of any voter. And indeed, in my last election, which we just finished in November, we actually won 2 precincts that voted for Trump. And that's an important indicator for me because it speaks to how we are able to reach voters of diverse backgrounds. But at the same time, it takes an effort to do so. You can't just fake that. You have to build that. And I do think not only will I have an impact in City Hall to lift up all of our communities, but it does also give me an opportunity to continue working when it comes to building statewide infrastructure and hopefully rebuilding an environment where Democrats have a chance to actually win elections at a statewide level.
It's funny, if you think about some of the rhetoric that Donald Trump used in his campaign when it came to sort of the distrust of corporations, the idea of being more in line with workers, we can debate whether or not we think that that was a sincere belief on his part. But the fact that Republicans and Donald Trump was able to sort of position themselves almost as the party of the working class in this past election shows just how far astray Democrats have lost that argument. And I'm curious to hear your thought as to why that came about.
So this is a topic that really frustrates me because oftentimes we look at our political world between a left and right spectrum. And for me, it's less about left versus right, and it's more about people versus corporations, or the bottom versus the top, right? It's helping to build economic wealth and well-being so that everyday families are not going to face obstacles when saving money to buy a house or sending their kids to college or getting that job promotion. And I do think that at the end of the day, the working class historically has been a democratic strength. And now it's being co-opted through a populist approach from the right. And to your point, doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily deliver on that, but they are taking away that narrative from us because too many Democrats ignore these issues or are comfortable accepting not just donations from large corporations, but consenting to their policy agenda, creating an environment where the poor get poorer. And of course, those of means continue to thrive while the rest of us get left behind. And the fact that now, soon to be back in office, President Trump, his suggestion for US Department of Labor is a pro-union Republican is another attempt to take away this electorate goal and voting base from us, which is why I'm proud to say that the first organization to endorse my bid for mayor here in Central Florida is our IBW, our electrical workers, one of our unions that is predominantly male and a union that has a long history here in our country. And so it's important for us to go back to those basics, but to not get caught up in the left versus right narrative, but to really more focus on our values and our focus when it comes to the needs of everyday workers.
Again, you're announcing very early this. So you will still be a state representative for this upcoming legislative session that runs for the final 2 years of Ron DeSantis's time as governor. I'm curious as to what your expectation is from Tallahassee this upcoming session, which starts in March. What do you think the agenda is likely to be like, and what kind of bills and are you expecting to come out of the Republican legislature this year?
Based on Speaker Danny Perez's speech during organizational session, there seems to be some opportunities for common ground, especially when it comes to corporate accountability. We all know that the property insurance crisis is one that's only gotten worse, and legislation that passed several years ago was written by the industry for the industry and not for consumers. I'm hopeful we'll be able to revisit that issue and actually craft policy that's designed to keep costs low for our consumers and to really hold insurance companies accountable who so often deny claims versus uphold their part of a contractual agreement. There also was some comments on private equity, buying properties and jacking up rates. So these are all issues, again, they're not necessarily left versus right. Some might say they're brain as progressive, but here you have a Republican speaker talking about them. Now, despite some of these areas of common ground, I have no doubt that there will still be battles around important social issues that impact our daily lives, whether it's restrictions on what you read in school, defunding of public education, all the way to additional restrictions on reproductive rights and more targeting of LGBTQ plus people. We already see bills filed going after our DACA students, eliminating their in-state tuition. So we're going to be prepared to fight on some of these really important and consequential issues that impact marginalized people, will also champion economic prosperity for all. And my hope is that we'll be able to strike a balance in going after some of these price gougers and really fighting for consumers by creating a free market versus allowing for corporations to dictate an agenda that benefits their bottom line and their shareholders.
To go back to the insurance question, that you started the answer with, what do you think can be done? Because I think one of the big things that the insurance companies received was greater insulation from lawsuits. This notion of being able to be protected from litigation that could hold them accountable when they're not paying their claims in a fast enough manner, or they're shortchanging people with their claims. And I'm just sort of curious whether or not, I'm not sure if you do, but I don't expect that to be reversed. So what areas of insurance reform is there still out there that you'd like to see enacted?
Great question, Jim. So we've had bipartisan legislation filed before that would basically create a public option or nonprofit option for universal storm coverage. And I do feel like that is a clear path forward. Texas does it, California does it for different natural disasters. Florida is a peninsula that sticks out into both the Atlantic and the Gulf. We are prone to these extreme weather patterns, which insurance companies don't want to cover. And so to provide a public option where every Floridian can tap into would help us stretch out the risk and, of course, provide coverage in the face of a natural disaster when Floridians oftentimes can't afford any other options and may even choose to go uninsured. With that said, our current insurance marketplace, not only is it written by the insurance industry to benefit themselves, but I would argue that it also incentivizes insolvency because you start up an insurance company, your CEOs are making money. And then if you do face insolvency, you have FIGA that's there to capture you and basically pay out the claims that you were unable to pay out. And those same shareholders who just ended a company will turn around and start a new company under a different name and redo the same behavior once again. So we have to also stop this cycle of incentivizing insolvency. And I do think a public option would put into the marketplace a competitor that is going to be grounded in the protection of consumer rights under state law and not operate with a goal of a profit, but really operate in the goal of delivering results.
We'll be right back.